Well, hi there. I'm Diana Montford, the world's first transgender television journalist. Born male, became female. If I say that one more time, I'm going to scream. Anyway, I say it at the beginning of every show so people know. Anyway, I probably wouldn't have said this 50 years ago because it was just before the Stonewall Rebellion. And we are going to talk about what amazing changes have taken place in the intervening 50 years from June of 1969 to today. And they are miraculous changes indeed. To be LGBTQ in 1969 was to be mentally ill, a criminal, totally unacceptable socially to all and sundry. It was tantamount to being a serial killer, child molester, mad bomber, all rolled into one. And now it's not, thank God. My guest is well-known transgender activist, Ms. Juli Grey-Owens, who is going to discuss, as am I, what the amazing changes that have taken place and what we can look forward to in the future. Now, Quentin Crisp was on the show many years ago in 1991, and he told me at that time, well, you know, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And in 1991, I was A, much younger, B, much callower, and C, I thought, God, these people, these old people, they don't get it. I mean, how could he think that we would take steps backward? Well, thanks to our dear president, Donald, what's his middle initial, J? Trump, we are, yes, taking 1 step backward. But he and other bigots are on the wrong side of history, and we, the LGBTQ community, shall prevail when it comes to our own safety and rights, because we will not have it any other way. My guest, Ms. Juli Grey-Owens. Well, hi there.
Hi there.
On that serious note, yeah. Now, we're both baby boomers. We were very young when we were teenagers. I was 13, you were 16.
16.
We were babies, but it made an impact, you know. We would not be here today if those brave people of 50 years ago hadn't fought back.
Exactly. No, there's no question about it. And for some of us, even my role in advocacy really didn't start taking hold until the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. So, you know, all that work and all those years of people being out and pushing and fighting really led us to where we're at now.
Yeah, absolutely. And happily, some of the original Stonewall Rebellion people are still alive today. They were not much older than we were then, amazingly enough, or even the same age we were then.
Yeah.
So, you know, they are flourishing, I'm happy to say, for the most part.
Right.
Sadly, the great late Sylvia Rivera is gone.
Yes.
Marsha P. Johnson is gone. Many others are, yes, naturally gone. 50 years is a long time. But many are not gone, and that's good.
Well, and I think it's also important for those of our community who are younger to have a little bit of history and to know a little bit about what went on before, because they have to take the ball, if you will, and they've got to carry it now, because we're not always going to be around.
No.
So there's work to be done. There's work to be done now, and there'll be work to be done tomorrow,
right, and
in the future. So I think it's a good idea to maybe step back and take a look at what was. I can remember I did not know that transgender people existed. Of course, the key here was there was no word transgender.
I certainly knew that they existed, and I lived a few blocks away from the Stonewall, and I went to a school half a block away from the Stonewall, and I used to see Sylvia Rivera and her friends cavorting every morning in Sheridan Square Park before I went into school. And I would study them because I realized that was where I was headed, that I would be transgender. Everyone knew that I was transgender. You know, people would actually introduce me, like, can you believe that that's a boy? Even like when I was wearing boys' clothes and everything. So anyway, no, I knew all too well what it was.
Well, that's a different experience than what I had, though.
I wish I'd had yours.
Well, I don't know that you'd want that. I lived in northwestern New Jersey in a very conservative, very rural area. And I thought, and I tell people this, I thought that I was God's mistake because I did not know there was anyone else like me.
Mm-hmm.
And probably around 16 or 17, as I recall, Newsweek magazine, we used to get Newsweek magazine, and they had something like, the story was, the transsexual phenomena or something.
Yeah.
And I read it, and, it had, it gave a couple of different words, and I was astonished that there were people that seemed to be similar to me. I mean, I still wrapping my head around it. And the ability to have those words meant that because I was a good student, I was able to get to the books behind the library counter at our high school where, people were not allowed unless you had a good reason.
Right.
And I was able to do it, and I got a little more information. But it was still very, very limited.
And it was
as
very
to what it
negative.
was.
You'd look up homosexuality in a medical book, and it would say, sad, lost, lonely people who often commit suicide. I mean, who needed this? You're 13, you're reading this. This is awful,
Well, the DSM at that time considered, gays and lesbians as having a mental illness.
Yeah.
And of course, we were even further down the line.
Way down that one.
So
Beyond the pale.
So even the professionals did not.
Even the gay professionals, yeah.
Exactly. Well, the other part of that, and what I always think is funny, is that manual is based on statistics, and because everyone was hiding, and not out. Statistically, it was a very rare instance when someone would say, hey, I'm gay, or hey, I'm trans, or whatever.
And not only that, but even the psychiatrists admitted that, well, of course, we're only dealing with people who go to psychiatrists. There are many well-adjusted LGBTQ folk who don't feel the need of going to a therapist, but we are dealing with those who do and who feel great guilt and discomfort with themselves and self-loathing and all that stuff.
Well, we still have that going on right now. I mean, that
Yeah.
hasn't changed. But I also think what's interesting is the Williams Institute came out, I'm going to say maybe 10 years ago, maybe it's less, and initially came out and said that percentage-wise of the population, the transgender community was, I think, 0.3% of the world's population. Well, they've upped that number now to double, to 0.6.
Well, that's good.
Well, I think the reality is they're going to find that number is going to go up even farther. On Long Island, I'm doing a lot of training in schools. And the thing that we keep hearing the most now is that not only are trans kids coming out earlier, but now the non-binary community is becoming, just like going to even be a greater number than pure trans people, if you will.
When we were kids, we lived in a very gender binary world. Male here, female there, ne'er the twain shall meet. I mean, women weren't allowed to wear pants to work or to school.
No, exactly. Right. Well, we talk about that a little bit when we talk about gender expression in some of the forums we're doing. And we talk about the fact that when I was a kid, you would go into the supermarket and mothers would be pushing the cart in high heels and dresses.
Sure.
And now, at least
makeup.
on Long Island, and makeup and jewelry, the whole thing.
Absolutely.
And now you'll go into, we have Stop and Shop on Long Island.
You go to Carnegie Hall, they're wearing jeans and no makeup and
sweatpants and their hair pulled back, no makeup, no.
Like
no
a happy
anything.
medium between,
But my point is that society is changing.
Yes.
And that 50 years, a lot has changed since then.
Yes. And hopefully for the better, although the style quotient could be elevated at that.
Well, we don't know what style is going to be because it'll reverse itself a little bit.
I hope. We need another fashion show like Dynasty to bring back fashion.
And I bet something will happen like that down the road.
I hope.
But I think for me at least, finding out that there were people like that made a big difference because then it was like, wait, what? There are others. And for me, I went to engineering school, then I went for my master's in business. So my experience of the artistic world was very limited. I
always knew it was beauty culture or theater for me. No other place would have me. I was trans.
Exactly. And mine was, once I got my working papers, I started working in factories. So that was the last place that anyone would ever showed
My
themselves?
father was an engineer, and he always hired butch lesbians because he said they're the best men there are. They work harder than the cisgender men. They're great guys. Treat them just like guys. They're very happy. So whenever he had a choice, he hired a butch lesbian, which was unheard of in his day, but he did it.
Yeah, well, my father had a similar result. He made sure that the people driving the forklifts were all women.
Good.
Because they were careful with the equipment.
Exactly.
Where guys were just like hot rodding around.
What time is
you
it?
know?
I want to buy a beer. Yeah, get out of here, man.
So you're right about that. But that's funny too, because how much has changed now? Drive down the road and look at the road crews. There are always women now on the road crew. That was an unheard of thing back
I live
then.
on the Upper East Side. About a month ago, I was passing a construction site. There was someone, it was like lunchtime. Someone was leaning back, drinking a coffee. I passed out of the corner of my eye, I said, wait a minute, are you a woman? And she said, yes. She was wearing a hood, so you couldn't see her hair.
Right.
I said, oh, I'm so glad. Oh, wonderful. I see police women walking in pairs in bus stations. I run up to them and say, you don't know how happy this makes me. Because when I was your age, that was impossible.
Right.
They always get it, though. They always understand, you know?
Well, I'll flip it. I've had a couple of times when I've gone to the hospital, and I've had a male nurse.
Oh, sure, all the time
And
now.
they're wonderful. They're
Yeah.
absolutely wonderful.
Absolutely.
So
That used to be the punchline on sitcoms when Stonewall happened in 1969. He's a male nurse.
Yeah.
Bruce, the male nurse,
yeah,
you know?
exactly. But I mean, they have, you know, they may or may not be heterosexual or homosexual, doesn't matter.
Right.
But they do a wonderful job. And
You know who was a great queen? Flip Wilson. His Geraldine was excellent.
yeah, I'm not a big fan of drag.
I'm not either. I consider it a minstrel show. Exactly. But for 1969, it was a drop of penicillin on a festering sore. You know?
Well, the thing is, even if you think back shortly after Stonewall, you look at the 70s and you look at the TV shows.
I'm going to get
and,
water, yes.
the movies during that period of time. If you saw someone who was male presenting as a woman, there was usually a reason for it. Mrs. Doubtfire. It was the only way that
Some
that
like it
person
hot.
could.
The gangsters are chasing
Right.
us.
And
they always-
Tootsie. Tootsie was
Tootsie's
the only way I
great.
could get a job.
Yeah, but years ago they used to make sure you could tell it was a man. Now they're clever enough to make them look like real women. You know?
Yeah, but I mean, you also had Tom Hanks's first role on TV was Bosom
Bosom
Buddies.
Buddies.
They had no place to live, so they went to live in like an all-girls
And at the
building or
beginning
something.
of the show, Peter Scolari would say, "This will make a great chapter in a novel one day," and the other one would say, "Boy, I love this girl I'm in love with who lives there." You know?
Right, right. So, or Psycho.
Yes.
What about, is it Silence of the Lambs, where the person actually used a skin? It was horrible.
That actually happens. A man scalped a woman before that film was made.
Horrible.
And wore the scalp as a wig.
Right, right. Well, this was similar to something
Excuse
like
me.
that, which was terrible. So the presentation of our community.
Dressed to Kill with Michael Caine.
Yes,
as
I
a
was thinking of that other one.
homicidal transvestite.
Yeah, exactly. So you either had these very weird situations where the guy was forced to do it in order to make a living,
Survive or
survive, or
something
see his
else.
kids, or you had a situation where, oh my God, this person should be put in an insane asylum.
Right.
You know,
For
what's
the
wrong
criminally
with that?
insane,
Right,
yes.
exactly. And that was your choices. Now we still have a long way to go.
Oh, God knows.
I always thought that it would be really great to have I worked in the manufacturing business.
Right.
And manufacturing can be like really crazy sometimes.
Sure.
If you're taking care of customers, there's always someone screaming for
Oh,
something.
yeah.
And while you're working with people, there's a lot of weird people working in manufacturing.
yes.
So it's
Admittedly.
So I always thought that instead of like the ER movie or TV show,
Yeah.
you could do one on manufacturing, and we'd have this guy that would seem to be a family man and would seem to be calm, and everything would be he would be under control at work while everyone else is going crazy, and then. We see him, come home, maybe the wife is out with the kids at a PTA meeting or something. He comes home, pops open a beer, goes up to the bedroom and changes into his clothing,
Yes,
and does
the
a
girl
flip.
clothes.
And that would be, I think, so positive because it would be like, wow, this person's really got their act together.
but they like what we like.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'm sure that happens more than...
Oh, gosh, yes.
And I'm
Oh,
sure
gosh,
the
yes.
wife says, I bought you something today. I was at Kmart, and I saw this dress, and it is perfect for you. Just your color, just your size, and here it is.
Well, I hope that that's the case. Unfortunately, I don't know that it's always that way. The reality is that the person who is trans goes out and finds the dress or whatever and has to hide it from the wife, because if the wife finds out, they'll go ballistic.
Sometimes when I'm shopping, I'll see men in the makeup department or the dress department. I always look away. But I used to sell cosmetics at Altman's. This very handsome businessman came in, and they had these lipsticks, taboo lipsticks. And there were two that were cherry red. We only had two of those left. He came to me. He was like about to commit a crime. He said, I'll have cherry red. I said, excuse me? I'll have cherry red. Okay. How many do you have? Well, we have another one. We have two. I'll take them both. I wanted to say, look, Buster, first of all, I'm like you, okay? So relax. Second, don't worry about it. But, what can I say? He was very nervous.
Right, and you probably just doing what you did didn't out him, because anything that you might have said might have just embarrassed him. Oh my God!
Sure, he probably didn't know I was trans, because I was stealthed in those days.
Right.
Because you had to be, or you couldn't get a job. So what can I say?
No, exactly. So that's still out there. There's still a lot of panic. There's still a lot of pain. We still have to work on that.
Something just happened with the clock on the monitor. I'll be right back. You keep talking. I shall be right back. Keep talking.
Okay, well, that's just great. Now that it's the Juli Grey-Owens show, it's been an interesting time period, especially for me. I actually had a very cisgender, heterosexual life. I met my first wife at 14, started going out with her at 16, and ended up eventually marrying her. And I came out to her at 20, and it was a very hard time for her. I had been a captain of my football team, and she really loved the maleness of me. But the reality is that I always knew there was something else happening, and I thought that when I came out to her, at least I was being totally honest. So it was always something that we shared. I'm talking a little bit about my little past history.
Yes.
And during the period of time when I started realizing that, I was trans and that there were other people like me, and actually starting to put together my first wardrobe, which was while we were in college. I was 20 at the time. And I ended up in a very small two-room apartment with 3 other guys.
Well,
so
college.
It was, we were packed in.
Yeah, sure.
But there was a spot in the closet where I had a suitcase with a lock on it, all the way up in the far corner of the shelf, and no one knew. And when no one was around, it was like, oh my God, get the suitcase out, kind of thing. So, that's what it was. That would have been now in the early 70s.
Well, it's very embarrassing to buy stuff.
Oh, yes.
Very. Very.
Oh, dangerous. Your heart was like,
yes.
Your heart was pounding.
They probably thought we were all like shoplifters because we were so,
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that, because again, I think we talked earlier about going to an event in Arkansas, in Eureka Springs. The first couple times that we went there, the idea of going here was this was a place where the gays and lesbians went there, to this place. And
sure.
Motorcycle riders would go there because it was up in the Ozarks and everything.
Oddly enough, they've always been very nice to us.
Right, exactly. So when we first started going to the stores, you'd walk into the store and they would follow you because they thought you were a shoplifter. And eventually, we would do our purchases and stuff. About the 3rd time that we came back to Eureka Springs, they were like, hey, hi, let me show you what we just got. Pulling stuff off the rack and the whole thing, because they knew, if you could afford to go to a trans event in Arkansas, you had money, and you were there to spend some money.
Well, also the way you look, you're very chic and very elegant, so they sense money.
Yeah.
But anyway, and I've also read that whenever they see someone very well dressed, they follow her, on the theory that she's well dressed because she's a shoplifter. She doesn't want to be read as a shoplifter.
Oh.
So she's going to be very elegant so people don't think she's
I'll
a
have to
shoplifter.
remember that.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So wear the old jeans and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. But no, so, you know. But yeah, we've come a long way. I mean, marriage equality, all this adoption. When I did a show on adoption in the 90s, maybe like 1993, it was such an out there show. It was so almost science fiction, you know? And it seems so radical that I would say, gee, we should be able to adopt, you know?
Well, realistically
Sadly,
now.
that print no longer exists.
Oh, that's too bad.
What happened was we only showed it once, and we got reaction, not good reaction. Like, you perverts, you want to adopt kids? What do you really want? You know? So we just, in those days, you could film over things.
Yeah, record over it.
Right, so we just used.
That's a shame because that
Yeah.
probably was a great show
It
on a super important topic.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. But yeah, things have changed. Are they where they're supposed to be? No, they're not.
Will they
there
ever
yet.
be?
No, probably not. Because as we learn, we want to do more,
Right.
and we need more. You know, and community members need to be taken care of. There's a lot of work to be done yet. There's a lot of our community members that are homeless.
Isn't that awful?
There's a lot of our community members that are either unemployed or underemployed.
Yeah.
When I'm with engineers and computer people and lawyers and
Who are us? Right.
and you know they're working at Kmart or
Yeah,
Walmart or something because they
exactly.
can't get a job.
Exactly.
There are issues, and this is the things that we have to work on for our community.
Yeah,
So.
we do. And, you know, it's very...
That's
I
all
once
a part
lost
of
a
it.
job. I was selling cosmetics in New Jersey in the 80s, and I went to the ladies' room, and I peed, but I peed too hard. And the woman in the next stall surmised that I had a secret. I was let go later that day.
Oh, that's horrible. Well,
I was lucky I wasn't
the good news is in New York
arrested,
State,
you know?
if that happens
Now,
we can do something.
in the 80s?
No. In the 90s, in the 2000s, up to January.
Yeah.
Although there were court cases already going in the direction that the law has now gone.
Yes.
But now everyone knows that that's the case. And it's a big
We
thing.
hope.
Well, if they don't, they're going to find out very quickly.
I believe Pauline Park was in a mall here in New York City and went to the ladies' room. And they stopped her and said, you can't go in there.
Yeah, but that was just after New York City passed their law,
Right.
which was, 2002, I think?
she sued, actually.
Oh, yes, she did. Absolutely. Oh, I remember the court case. I remember the write-up.
Yeah.
She did a wonderful thing. You know,
Yeah.
not only did she get the law passed, but then it happened after the law was passed, and she was able to then sue them.
Good.
So it was a wonderful case of not only getting the law passed, but then being able to utilize the law and correct something that
And
was
she
wrong.
looks good, so I don't see
she's
how they even
wonderful.
knew,
Right.
you know.
Well, you know, you never know when you're going to get read.
Isn't that weird?
It happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
And ladies out there, ladies like us, you never know, you know. At some point, you're always going to get read. No matter how good you are at it, no matter how old you are, somebody somewhere is going to smell their proverbial rodent, and there you go.
Well, it happens. I've taken the tack that if someone decides to out me or realizes that, you know, that I'm trans, I've been very open about it.
Me too.
I want people
both
to
built
know it, so it's,
careers
you know,
on it.
well, exactly. But it was very hard. It was very hard in those years when I was married to my first wife who was not accepting of it. You know, if we kept it within the four walls of the house,
Sure.
everything was fine. But the moment I stepped out to do advocacy work, it was, well, why are you doing this? Why does it have to be you? And it's like, well, because I hear a calling.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny. I was always
You're Catholic, aren't you?
was
Well, me too. I was.
was
We would have called this a vocation years ago. Yes.
yeah.
Not unlike taking the veil or becoming a priest.
Well, it's funny though because I always remember, you know, I've always enjoyed history, and I always felt I was born at the wrong time. That I missed the Revolutionary War, or I missed the Civil War, or I missed World War II, and I realize now as I've gotten older, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to
Exactly.
be,
And
I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to
Me
be
too,
doing.
yeah.
So
I always loved Hollywood
knew?
in the 20s and 30s, but this is it. We're in
you're
Hollywood.
living it.
Yes.
You're living it.
Hello. So, you know, I mean, what can I tell you? You know, it's we're very lucky to have come as far as we have, but we owe it not only to each other, but to a lot of people
absolutely.
who fought like crazy. Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson founded the Street Action Transvestite something or other in 1971. That was not a shortcut to popularity, being a transvestite, much less a street transvestite, in 1971. They did it. They did their best to do their best. They opened minds. They helped homeless trans youth. They did a lot of good, you know.
And a lot of the guests that you're having on the show are actively working for the community now and have worked for the community.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking of Tanya Walker. I'm thinking of
She's
Melissa
fabulous.
Sklars.
I love her.
All of you know,
She got me into politics.
some wonderful people
Which I
who have
should
done
slap
a
her,
lot
but
of work.
anyway, I love her.
You know, Kiara St. James is
She's
doing
great.
some wonderful
She's
work.
great.
There are just, and there's too many to
Right, exactly. If we've left you out, we know
Right.
you're great.
But those have been the people that have driven, you know, the focus here in New York City area, and also what we'd like to see is more work being done upstate to help
Sure.
those people upstate.
And everywhere else, too.
Yes,
Throughout
absolutely.
the U.S. and throughout the world. There are many countries right now who will stone you to death if you're gay or whatever. And that is not cool. So we want to change that. So how can people contact you?
Well, Gender Equality New York has a Facebook page. We have officially become a New York State corporation and have just been given our 501c3 designation actually last week. So you can reach us at www.facebook.com/genderequalityny/ and that's one way of connecting with us. We have various forums that we're doing around the state, gives you information about that and other things that are going on. You can contact me there as well.
Absolutely. My guest has been Ms. Juli Grey-Owens, who was one of the leading lights in pushing through the Gender
Equality, Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act.
Right, even she stumbled a bit on that one, yeah. And she was great. And a lot of you did a lot of good for that.
Things.
But you're sort of the mother of it, you know? Anyway, and she also heads the...
Gender Equality New York.
There you go.
Jenny.
Jenny.
It just makes it easy. Jenny.
And she may be coming to your town sometime soon, if you're lucky, and do one of her forums. And maybe eventually throughout the country. Anyway, I'm Diana Montford. This has been the Diana Montford Show. Even if no one else loves you, I love you. Julie loves you. We both love you.